the Irish Song and Recitation Festival, home of song, story, and poetical proverb. You are at the Irish Roots Cafe, and I am Mick the Bridge, your host. This is one of 3 broadcast series here at the cafe. The other 2 cover Irish family history worldwide and the history of the Irish in America. Oroche da Vahawalia. So step right up to the microphone, folks. Consider calling in at 816-256-3360. Then you just speak, sing, or play your piece proudly into my phone recorder. If it fits, we will place it on the air in a future show. But remember, it's all for free and it's all for fun, and tens of thousands of our listeners are looking forward to each show. And why is that? Because every day's a holiday at the Irish Roots Cafe. Reach me anytime, and be sure to read my show notes for this episode on my webpage at www.irishroots.com. Now let's move into the big back room here at the cafe and have a listen to what's being served up today. This is the Irish Roots Cafe, where every day's a holiday and there's always room for one more. Boy, we're going right along on our 10 songs challenge here with Peter Adams, and he's just gotten back from singing When Irish Eyes Are Smiling, so he's gotten a lighthearted bit done. I wonder what song I'm going to pick for him next. I'm not quite sure, but I think we're going to ask him how the crowd is and what the folks are out there like, what they're feeling like, and if he heard anything interesting.
But all I can say about that crowd is, now you believe me, it's something else out there. They're wild, they're crazy.
Are there some fine folks?
It's lovely folks, too.
Would they be charming?
They would be charming. It's a grand group. They're brilliant.
Oh, my
But
goodness.
the crack is good.
Yes.
And they're having a grand time out.
Oh, I know it. I know you can't keep them down, and I hate to say it, but we've already run out of a few supplies, so I don't have to run into town and bring some more in. Boy, we're a day ahead of time.
You know, we were talking in the last segment about Irish Eyes. I had to sing that song there. It has a little bit about, the joy and the happiness that's in Ireland. So many people thought that, Ireland was a country of sadness because of all the terrible things that happened over the years, whether it be the occupation of the Brits, whether it be an attempted destruction of their culture, and also, of course, on Gorta Mór, the Great Hunger that had a tremendous, and then, of course, people leaving. And we often hear about the sadness of Ireland. But, Ireland also has some beautiful love songs and great poets.
Oh, that's
Out of
right.
Ireland came Nobel Peace Prize winners for poetry and literature. Right out of Ireland, beautiful ones.
That's
right.
right.
Years and years ago, of course, there was Thomas More, and in our later days, we had William Butler Yeats, and in modern days, we had Seamus Heaney,
Right.
who recently, 98, great poet. And so those folks are in there, and that spirit of Ireland is still there too. And some people don't remember it also, but remember, Ireland was known as the island of saints and scholars.
That's right.
They preserved culture. There's even that book out, How the Irish Saved Western Civilization.
That's
it's
right.
True. It's
That's
true.
right.
And then, of course, others laugh. No, but it's true.
Oh, yeah, Europe was in a mess.
True.
There was nowhere to go.
The Dark Ages.
They had to bring things over to the sanctuaries in Ireland just to save them, to preserve them.
That's right.
And then as things got better, they went back out into Europe. And
Sure, it's like the Book of Kells. They
That's
buried
right.
it.
That's
they
right.
did it on purpose to
Yeah.
save it.
Yeah.
And they always say about the bogs, if you fell in the bog and you died, when they found you, you'd be perfectly preserved.
Oh, well.
I don't understand.
A lot of it
but
has been.
that's the truth.
Yeah.
Perfect. And they found things. Well, they're telling me a car or something. pulled it up. It's perfect.
Yeah, everything.
I mean, it had the bog all over it, but it's just amazing of what's there. And yes, and things were saved there in Ireland.
Yeah, I think the oxygen and the temperature
That's
all
what it is.
played a difference. Yeah.
Sure. But Ireland is also an island which has great love things and great love songs. I'm reminded of, see if I can get you on this one. Great Irish. There's his name, though, you see, is sometimes confused with someone of the same name, but who was in England.
Oh, yeah.
And who was the chancellor for the English under Henry.
And had to make some tough decisions.
Yes, and he did, and he lost his head over it.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
Henry didn't like him, and of course I'm talking about Sir Thomas More, who was the chancellor of England and also the great Catholic. He was a champion of Catholicism because he fought against Henry when Henry wanted to change the church and take over it himself.
That's right.
But then the other Thomas More, he's a great poet, and some of his poems were then put to music.
Oh,
and which is the case of a lot.
And if you collect Irish books at all, you'll notice there's just a big influx of books that were by Thomas More with his poetry and his music. And it's really quite surprising if you haven't looked at it before. And he wrote, what was that famous one he wrote in 1808, Peter? I think that was Believe Me, If All Those
Endearing Charms.
Yes, yeah.
And I heard it was 1811, but that doesn't matter in the big picture.
You know what? Every time I look, there's at least two answers to every question.
That's always the way it is. But I understood that one. There's a couple of stories that I've heard even. But he married, his wife's name was Bessie. And apparently, and as the story that I've heard, her looks were destroyed. Now, and she was afraid, or they were destroyed, or I could even say ruined. It was a skin disease, so one story says. And it happened after they had been married for quite a number of years. And she thought that she would lose his affections. And so he wrote, Believe me, if all those endearing young charms, which I gaze on so fondly today, were to fade by tomorrow as fleet in my arms, like fairy gifts fading away. He was telling her how much he loved her, that the outside was just the shell, the inside was where the person was. In our world today, wouldn't it be great if people thought that?
Oh, that's the answer to a lot of problems.
Yeah. And More was born in Dublin. He was the son of a grocer.
Right.
And he went to school at Trinity College in Dublin and in London. And then he lived in London. He went over to London and he stayed over there. But he grew up in County Wicklow, which is known in Ireland as the garden spot of Ireland. We said in another segment that Kerry was known as the Kingdom County.
Right.
Well, Wicklow is the garden. And in Wicklow is Glendalough, which is a great portion there. It's not very far from Dublin, just south of Dublin. And Glendalough is where St. Kevin's Kitchen is. And it's a valley, and there's a long tower house there, very large, and graveyard, and a lot of Celtic crosses and things. That's in Wicklow. And then further on there is Avoca.
Right.
Where the meeting of the waters was another thing that Thomas More had to talk about there.
That's right.
He was an amazing man, but his home was in Avoca.
Well, you said he was also connected to London there. That song, the air itself, not the words, but the song was first printed in London in 1737, according to information I've found. And they think it's even older than that. And they also think that the melody was put to the words of another poem, which was named "My Lodging Is in the Cold Ground," which was another tune by Locke. But so these things, they're all over the place. When you get a good tune,
oh, sure,
people write these words down, and you never know where you're going to find it.
More was an interesting fellow. They said he came from very meager beginnings, and that he was a gruff character, and he remained that way all his life. He said he didn't lose any of that.
Can you imagine that? And you think a poet should be a gentle soul.
You think, exactly.
At all times.
But
no.
It doesn't have to be. Look at Brendan Behan.
That's right.
I mean, rough and tumble, but he was one of the greatest Irish writers.
You have to be in touch with life.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But I think with More, and part of the other story that I had heard, and I do know this, he was the registrar of the Admiralty in Bermuda.
Oh my, Bermuda.
Bermuda. So he went from, he's an Irishman, got to England, rose up, And they sent him as kind of like an ambassador in charge of the Admiralty there.
Right.
And and the first time I heard the story about Believe Me If All Those Endearing Young Charms was that he was in Cuba, which, of course, I mean, you can move from Cuba to Bermuda. It is a bit of a distance, but you can do it. And there was a fire, and that his wife was scarred terribly because she was in the fire. And so there's two stories there. One was that she had a skin disease of something that ruined her, and she thought she lost her beauty because of that. The other, that while he was away, it happened, and there was a fire in their home. And, you know, you think about it, in those years, the open turf fires.
That's right.
The big fireplaces. You know, you didn't have central heating. You had to use the fire. And so that's, and that is a plausible story. Well, both of them are great.
I even heard a third one, which is less likely. But it said the song was written by Moore for the wife of the Duke of Wellington. And she had smallpox and was badly disfigured and wouldn't come out of the room. So they took the words and slipped it under the door so she'd come out. And that sounds more like a story of fancy, perhaps, but a touching one nonetheless.
Or it's them trying to steal the song and bring it over to the other island.
Yeah, you know, that makes a lot of sense. That's right.
But but beyond that, the song, no matter what it was, no matter what the condition was, whether it was a fire, whether it was a skin disease, whether it was smallpox, the reality is the words were saying, I am in love with you, and your beauty is inside. It's just a shell.
That's right. Yeah. Perfectly said.
And I would say this, believe me.
Well, take some of your endearing young charms there, Peter, and and share them with the audience as they hear you sing this classic song as we start to wind up the final day of the Irish Arts Song and Recitation Festival.
I'm just worried about, I think I'm wearing that microphone out there. Do you have another one I can use?
You know, we do. We've got a new S120. It ought to be fine.
That'd be great. Then.
Okay. We'll see you back in about 5 minutes.
Okay.
Believe me if all those endearing young charms which I gaze on so fondly today were to change by tomorrow and fleet in my arms like fairy gifts fading away. Thou would still be adored at this moment thou art. Let thy loveliness fade as it will, and around the dear ruin each wish of my heart would entwine itself ardently still. It is not while beauty and youth are thine own, and thy cheeks unprofaned by a tear, that the fervor and faith of a soul can be known, to which time will but make thee more dear. No, the heart that has truly loved never forgets, but as truly loves on to the close, as the sunflower turns on her god when he sets, the same look which she turned when he rose.
That's a wrapper for today, folks. I'm Mick the Bridge at the Irish Roots Cafe. You can contact me at mike@irishroots.com or Send your submission or your notes to Box 7575, Kansas City, Missouri 64116. And you can always reach me on the web at www.irishroots.com. Call up and leave me your message or your entry on my phone recording machine at 816-256-3360. Just do it today. And oh yes, any donation to keep this show going is appreciated. And remember, keep the best of your Irish heritage alive today.